In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the 2025 F1 Monaco Grand Prix. If you're interested in what my thoughts are as a specialist technical driver coach and mentor, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Let's start, of course, with Lando's win. It was a beautiful win, and of course, it was one that was built on solid foundations. Lando built himself a weekend this weekend here in Monaco. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? Well, Monaco is very much about confidence as it is about anything else, including technique, including car and car setup. Lando built that confidence throughout the weekend, didn't have a single contact with the barrier in FP1, FP2, FP3 and qualifying. And it just meant that he could continue to grow throughout the weekend. Similarly, Charles Leclerc, and it wasn't a surprise to me, therefore, to see them line up 1-2 on the grid in front of their respective teammates. Piastri, who did have a little nudge into the wall at turn 1 under braking, lost his front wing in practice. And Hamilton, of course, the oversteer moment in Massenet, the long right-hander, he damaged the right-hand side of his car. These things matter in terms of confidence, and they're the immeasurables, right? In a sport told in tenths, no hundredths, no thousandths of a second, this surely matters. And come qualifying, I wasn't surprised to see Lando and Charles 1 and 2. And yeah, it just goes to show you do need to build yourself a weekend. The smallest of mistakes can just peg you back a little bit. And when you want to put the thing on the limit in Q3, you know, that's where the difference will be about who's more confident in backing their ability. So good for Lando to get this one over the line in the win, with the win. I think it's good for him mentally. You know, we always speak a lot on this channel about Lando's mentality, his self-doubt. And I think it'd be good for him moving forward to have a Monaco Grand Prix. Yes, it's worth 25 points, but of course, moving into the next part of the season, I think it's just going to give him a little bit of a push. Hopefully he can reinvigorate, re-spark, re-find his mojo and crack on with the 2025 F1 season. Now, the news overnight was, of course, that Lewis Hamilton had the 3-place grid penalty. That meant that he got dropped back from P4 to P7. I didn't really see much of an implication for Lewis's race, but the thing that I highlighted in the pre-race live stream, I don't know if you guys came to it, was that this now put Max right next to Oscar. And if we look back to Imola, when Max was right next to Oscar, he weighed up the risks in real time and said, well, I'm behind in this race. I'm looking at a points deficit. We either come together and it's neutralized, or best case, I take the lead of the Imola Grand Prix, I go on and win and gain myself 7 points. But what I'm not going to do is just sit behind Oscar and claim a points deficit. I thought we'd be looking at something similar here this weekend with Lewis now removed with that 3-place grid penalty for impeding Max in qualifying. I thought we'd be looking at some interaction between Max and Oscar down at turn 1, if not down at the Nouvelle chicane. Now, both McLarens got a really bad start, not the best start, very short run down to Saint-Devote, turn 1 in Monaco. And Max did have a bit of a look around the outside, but it wasn't enough. He couldn't get sufficiently alongside. He was not going to drive around Oscar and wrap him up at turn 1 the same way he did in Imola. But I was expecting Max to be a little bit more aggressive. Again, if you consider that the championship at this point is likely between Oscar and Lando or Oscar and Max, as in Oscar is the one leading and probably the one likely that you're going to be competing against, I thought Max would have been a little bit more aggressive and just go for it. But anyway, he played the percentages. He finished the race P4, I believe, and lost ground to Oscar this weekend. So Max doesn't normally play those percentages. And sometimes it's hard to get a read on what he's thinking. Like with the Imola move, it was an amazing move. For me, the percentages were to not go for it. Like it was such a fine gap that he had to thread. And it was risky. And okay, I get it. If he took both the cars out, that's probably a neutral. That's considered a win. But that was against the percentages. And I think here he could have done, maybe he could have done more. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. But I thought like he signed himself away in a way to a points loss. But look, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here at the moment. Was there an opportunity for Max to try something again and know that if both the cars came out with no points, that would be a better outcome than Max coming away with less points? I'm not sure, but anyway, Max does Max, and he got P4 in the end. But with both McLarens making a bad start, Lando Norris also locked up down at turn 1 in Saint-Devote. Did that flat spot his tires? Yes, a little bit, but it didn't seem to have big implications as that first stint unfolded. Remember, Lando's got the clean air up front as well. So by the time the laps roll through, Leclerc's got dirty air, dirty tires. Lando can then find his way back. So I think it would have had a bigger impact if it was from P2, but given that Lando was in the lead, he didn't really have anything to worry about. And that's very common. A double lockup on the fronts is common of cold track, cold tires, cold brakes, generally low grip, things not up to temperature. And I think it was a harmless one. It looked worse on the cameras than what it was. Now, in the early laps, we have to talk about Kimi Antonelli's move on Gabi Bortoleto. A good move, classy move, up the inside into Portier, turn 8. We've seen it before. A few drivers do it. It was ambitious. Like it was what's the word I'm looking for? Like it was switched on. Kimi was awake and attentive and opportunistic. He went for it. And it just meant that Gabi couldn't turn into the corner and unfortunately clumsily hit the wall. So you guys would probably want, if I don't mention it, you guys would probably ask me what my thoughts are on it. Fair move. And that's just the nature of Monaco. Sometimes hard to get two cars around, particularly these big dinosaurs that we have in 2025. Let's talk about the strategy now. From my point of view, I'm not sure whether it made the race any better. Now, don't criticize F1 for trying something. I get it. They want to improve the racing. The problem I have with it is like in Japan, for example, one of the most spectacular racetracks in the world, one that should be a good race, should be straightforward from which to pass on long straights and DRS and so on. We had a pretty boring race there. And I'd be like, well, you need to clean up those races before you go after the Monacos. Monaco, we expect a procession. The qualifying is the main event of the Monaco Grand Prix. That's where the cars are on the limit, and we see that fight for Q3 and pole. That's the main event. I don't expect like a stellar race. If you get one, great. But if you don't, like it's fine. Or at least for me, it's fine. I don't think tampering with Monaco was the way to go. Rather, with this two-stop strategy, I've always been saying I think we should implement it on all of the other races, that you have to use the soft, the medium, and the hard in all your normal races. That is, they should all be not necessarily two stops, because changing in a red flag I would consider acceptable as well. But just to see the way the cars start on different compounds, how the VSCs and SCs change, that changes the race. And you've got to remember, it really shines a light on the strengths and weaknesses of the cars as well. Those that can switch the hard tires on will be good, or those that don't have tire life will burn their softs as well. And you'll get to see that because they're forced to use all compounds of tire. I would like to see that moving forward, and just that gets rid of the one stops, firstly. And secondly, again, like I say, it shines a light on the way the cars and drivers use the tires. I think that needs to be done first before we look at Monaco. I had a fear that it was going to be quite intense in the pit lane with a lot of cars coming in and out. It wasn't that bad. Everyone kind of came in on their laps. There weren't too many occasions where, more than 2 or 3 cars came in. Personally, I found the race difficult to follow. Obviously, with the low hanging fruit, like I get it, like Mercedes, didn't pit until ages. Max was goal hanging for the red flag at the end. You had the early pit stops from like Colapinto, Tsunoda, and those guys. I get it. I followed it broadly. But during the mid race, that was tricky to follow at times. I'm not sure if they made it any better, but like I don't criticize them for trying either. I just think that we're missing opportunity to have better races on other tracks as well. We also had the situation where the teammates were holding up each other, were holding up the grid to help the other teammate and stuff like that. Again, like it's not, you don't want to see stuff like that. It's not racing. That's just Monaco. It's more of a game of chess, right? At that point than it is Formula One racing. So yeah, look, good on them for trying. I don't think we'll see it again, but I think they're on the right track with the whole 2-stop thing. But again, for me, it's not really about stops. I want to see the range of Pirellis being used in the weekend. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on that philosophy and if it would make sense. Now, look, Oscar Piastri's struggles continued just with the handling of that McLaren. I'll bring up a shot in a second for you guys. But essentially, all through practice and qualifying this weekend, Oscar's been struggling with on-throttle oversteer, so exit oversteer. And I'm not sure why. Like he's either not being patient enough, waiting for the corner to unfold before he goes for the throttle. That's one explanation. The second would be he's just putting the throttle on too hard as well. So when he goes for the throttle, he's not just introducing the car gradually to the throttle. He's just, too much too soon, basically. The third and unlikely outcome or unlikely hypothesis, would be that either throttle or diff are just not set up properly. So throttle mapping, the gears, the revs, the short shifting, the exit differential or on throttle differential. is not quite set up right. A few things to look at there. If I had to guess, I'd just say Oscar puts the throttle on too hard, too early, too fast, and while the steering wheel is turned, crucially as well. I think if he carries more speed in, uses the front to slow the car down a little bit more, opens the steering wheel, and then goes for the throttle, that might be a little bit easier. So more of a short corner style. We spoke about that after qualifying yesterday. But look, I'm not here to coach Oscar on how to use the throttle. He knows that. But what surprises me is that we've seen it the whole weekend. There was no solution put in place. There was no iteration. There was no trying. Surely he's identified it, but he didn't really clean it up over the weekend either. So that's all. I just wanted to call that out, that Oscar's on throttle oversteer issues continued. I'll show you guys an image of it now. There was just another example down at turn 1. It's the same thing, right? It's the entry oversteer. So the car just, as Oscar goes for the throttle with the steering lock on and putting it down too early and too hard and too quickly, lighting up the rear tires. And look, in the race, it didn't have implications. This is an example at turn 1. Remember, the race was more of a chess match than it was a Formula One race. But I think during the weekend, it had implications on his lap time. Not to mention down here at turn 1, he stuck it in the wall, just damaged the front wing on Friday, I believe. So yeah, I just think, I'm not looking at this weekend. I'm just thinking more broadly. If Oscar has issues during the weekend, like, he's going to have to put those fires out and try to, like, similar what Max Verstappen does. He'll have a bad Friday and it's all sorted by Saturday and he can jump on pole. And it's that level of problem solving that I think Oscar's going to need moving forward if he's going to really seriously fight and compete for the 2025 F1 World Championship. Now, there was a point at which the Williams drivers were holding up George Russell, and he just went through the Nouvelle chicane and just basically cut the chicane and said, you know what, I'll get the penalty. I don't care, but I got to get rid of this guy because he's wasting so much time. What did I think of that? Well, fair enough, I guess. Like, at this point, you've got teammates holding up drivers for other drivers. You've got Max goal hanging for a safety car, a red flag, sorry, at the front. Again, chess match settings. George is like, well, just need to get this car in clean air. I can go so much quicker. I'll take the penalty. Mercedes completely botched the strategy anyway. They had problems in quality. They didn't have much choice. But I thought that was interesting. And again, you don't want to see stuff like that. People are looking at the rule book now saying, if we do this, what's the penalty for it? And is it feasible? And you just don't end up with the racing at the end of the day. You end up with just people committing crimes because the penalty is better than the current state of play, if that makes sense. So I thought I'd call that out as being something interesting, but not really something we want to see moving forward. A quick shout out to Lewis Hamilton's race engineer. He deserves a shout out to my subscribers on this channel for being the MVP of Ferrari this weekend. Not only did he cost Lewis Hamilton, his driver, 3 places due to miscommunication in qualifying. And that miscommunication looked something like, Max is on a push lap behind you. Oh, no, he's not. He's backed off. When Max was, in fact, on a push lap. And then Hamilton, with those mixed messages, accidentally got in the way of Max Verstappen. That was the cause of his 3-place grid penalty. So that was the first mess up. Like, now you've got a situation where if Hamilton's fighting for a championship, his race engineer is costing him. Like, his race engineer is holding him back literally by the hand, and Hamilton can't proceed. So Hamilton's got a 3-place penalty through no fault of his own, through the communication of his race engineer. And it's the K1 that we've seen in Melbourne. It's this one in qualifying. It's in Miami when Hamilton said, do you want a tea break? Come on, get the decision. I'm on the mediums, let me through. There's been a few. And there was another one towards the end of the race. Hamilton asking a very simple question. He says, are they still ahead by a minute? And Hamilton's asking basically, how far are they ahead? And I think this is not Hamilton's fault, but he might have to just ask in more direct terms now. How far are the drivers ahead in seconds, please? And Hamilton just says, are they still ahead by a minute? Hamilton's looking for an answer in time metrics, right? Give me an answer in seconds, minutes, hours, laps, meters, kilometer. Give me some metric back. How far are they ahead? So Ricky Adami, to his credit, responds, Charles is on the medium. McLaren is on the hard, and they're lapping in the 16s and they're fighting. Hamilton comes back on the radio and says, mate, you're not answering the question. How far are they ahead? Are they inside a minute or not? Not sure why Lewis would want to know that at that point. There's 2 or 3 laps to go, and I'm not sure what the significance of 1 minute is. But again, it's another example of the race communications, race operations. I've said for a while, like it's the only two skills that you need to be a race engineer are empathy. You need to understand what the driver's going through and what information they probably want to have at that time. So empathy is very important. A good example is when Lando Norris asked to his race engineer last year, "Can I have the gap to the car?" And then Will, his race engineer, gave him the gap to the car in front. Well, Lando's got two eyes. He can see the car in front. He wants the gap to the car behind. So empathy is very important. Trying to understand what does my driver actually need and want at this time. And communication is the only other thing. Communicating that information clearly, concisely, no more, no less. So not cluttering, but then giving the right information at the right time. You don't need to be an engineer for that. You just need to be good at communication. It's more of an EQ role, like emotional. You need the right empathy and communication. Yet they hire probably the best qualified engineer for the job, and it's not working. So I don't know, like I would hate to think that if Lewis had a good car, like if Lewis is putting this race on pole and getting 3-place grid penalties, or putting it on pole and then the strategy, like this is worse now, right? This is what happened to Leclerc, I think around Monaco, was it 22 or 21? I can't remember, when they messed him up then. That's painful. So you'd hate to think what would happen if they actually had a decent car. I think it would be worse because it would really be shining a light on the missed opportunities. But now, like up to this point, the car hasn't been here nor there, so it's not a big deal. But to the extent to which they'll be competing for poles and wins, mate, the race operations has got to be sharpened up, because that's when it matters, right? So yeah, I thought I'd call that out as well. Quick summary of the results on the screen in front of you. The race was won by McLaren's Lando Norris, 13.2 as the best lap. Good job. That was when Max got out of the way finally for his final pit stop. Hamilton P5. Obviously, I think he could have got P4 in the end with, if not for that 3-place good job, of course. But a few notable call-outs here. Hadjar, Ocon, Lawson, I think really good jobs in V-Carbs and the Haas car as well. We called out on the live stream what a great mentality Esteban Ocon had this weekend. If you haven't heard that mentality, I'll bring it up for you now.
Yeah, it's important to build up, slowly and, unleash everything you have, at the right moment, which is qualifying. If you take a step back, it's difficult to recover from it. And this is what you always need to do.
So that's Esteban Ocon talking about building up a weekend in Monaco. Exactly what we said with Lando Norris, how he built himself a weekend. Seems like Esteban's built himself a solid weekend as well here. Didn't take any step back, didn't take any drop in confidence and points in the Haas, which is a very good result. Quick shout out to Colapinto as well. He started near of the back, right? I think there was only 2 cars behind him due to penalties, probably Stroll and Behrman. Colapinto has managed to get up there into P13. I think he had an early pit stop. So the guys that pitted early, I think, was the way to go. And the Mercedes guys that didn't pit until right at the end wasn't the way to go, because everyone was in their pit window at that point, which means if they pit, they'll just fall behind all of them. That's what happened to Antonelli. So good job by Franco. No crashes this weekend. Went up 5 or 6 spots, maybe call it 5, for example, on the race. So that's good. Like that's all you can ask. Really from Franco, and I hope that gives him some confidence he can build on that moving forward as well. Looking ahead, guys, we've got the live stream for the Spanish Grand Prix. I'm going to be talking about the key areas to unlock performance around that track. A lot of long corners of increasing radius. Traction, very important. Traction, Oscar Piastri didn't have a lot of it this weekend in Monaco. So we'll have to see if that correlates as Oscar's traction struggles, that is the on throttle, the short shifting, the throttle shape, the differential, all of those struggles, do they carry over next weekend in Spain? And do we see Lando continue to apply pressure on Oscar? I'll be talking about that in the live stream on Thursday. Guys, if you could please comment the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel as well. All of these things really help me push the channel moving forward. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So any question or thought you had, drop it down there for me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.